Hey there, Podcast Aquanauts. It's your host, Casey here. All right, I have a confession to make. Of the many hundreds of animals that live in the aquarium's largest habitat, the 618,000-gallon Secret Reef exhibit, the ones I always find myself homing in on are the cownose rays and spotted eagle rays. There's just something so relaxing, borderline hypnotic about watching them glide through the water between towering coral formations. Maybe it's the science fiction lover in me or their general shape, but to me they look like a squadron of living starfighters flying through space whenever they pass in front of a viewing window. I mean, is it any wonder that internet wordsmiths have officially dubbed stingrays as majestic underwater flaps? Here at the aquarium, we have a huge variety of rays for you to see, and in some cases to touch, from the aforementioned residents of the Secret Reef to absolutely colossal freshwater whip rays in the River Giants exhibit. And obviously, they're the namesake of our Stingray Bay Touch experience for a reason. Given my appreciation for these cartilaginous beauties, then it was with no little excitement that I received a request from a listener for the episode you're about to hear, focusing on all things stingray at the aquarium. From their surprisingly charismatic personalities and love of bubbles to how mama rays go about making oh so cuddly baby rays. And no, I don't mean the barbecue sauce. I know at least one of you out there is a fan of rays, and hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll all be experiencing a bit of stingray fever too. By the way, a large group of stingrays is called a fever, which makes that a joke only a marine biologist would get, but I digress. Anyway, what say we get on with the podcast? Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Podcast Aquatic, the official podcast of the Tennessee Aquarium. Today's episode is actually a listener request. One of the first listener requests that ever came in, actually, as a matter of fact. This is a request from a YouTube listener, Schrock568, who said they visited the aquarium last July and listened to every episode. They asked for a discussion, quote, on rays, that being a pretty broad topic. I prodded them for a bit more elaboration, and they said they'd like to know more about, quote, every ray species at the aquarium and how we care for them, which is a tall hill to climb, but we are going to do our best to do so. And at this point in the show's life cycle, if you ask us to cover a topic just out of sheer gratitude for you listening to the show, I will probably do my best to cover it. So at any rate, I asked 3 experts in today to make sure that Schrock568 gets their wish fulfilled, to talk about ray care. But before I get too into that, let's go ahead and introduce who we have on the show today. So to my left, although that doesn't matter to anybody but me, is Cody Beavers. Cody, you are an aquarist too at the aquarium.
Yes. Hi.
And across from me, again, mattering to no one but me, is Brenda Salgado.
Correct. Yes.
And Brenda, you are also an aquarist too.
Yes.
And to my right, a returning guest to the Podcast Aquatic. You might remember him from the first episode of the Podcast Aquatic, and if you don't, then please go back and listen to it or work on your memory. This is Kyle McPheeters. Kyle, you have a different title than the last time we spoke, and why don't you tell us what that is?
Yeah, now I'm the lead LSS aquarist. Basically, I'm the guy that knows more about life support. That's kind of my focus, in addition to the sharks and rays and corals. Life support, system design, basically. Life support's a fancy way of saying the systems that keep the fish alive.
I was about to say, people probably hear life support and think that it has something to do with space. So
not space, not a hospital, literally our pumps, our filters, all that kind of thing.
The important stuff about making sure that there are animals here for people to see.
Yeah, literally life support for fish that breathe in the water.
Okay. All right. So I asked all of you into the studio dive cage today because probably unsurprisingly, all 3 of you care for rays at the aquarium. In fact, I'm fairly certain that with the exception perhaps of our South Carolinian native senior aquarist, Stephen Beeman, I have everyone here who cares for rays at the aquarium. Is that right?
Yeah, that's all of us.
Yep. But he's more of a, don't point that mic at me, I'm too busy aquaristing kind of guy anyway. So
really busy, really important man.
A very, very important man. That is true. Okay. But before we talk too much about caring for rays, let's get some definitions out of the way. So what exactly is a ray?
So we talked about sharks last time I was with you, and they're a relative of the sharks. They're an elasmobranch, same as sharks. A cartilaginous skeleton basically differentiates them from the bony fish, the more typical animal you picture when you say the word fish. Tend to be benthic, bottom dwelling, but doesn't have to be, like some of the rays that Brenda works with. Tend to be horizontally compressed. They have grinding plates for teeth.
Right, we got to back up. So horizontally compressed, you need to explain that in terms that the non-aquarist will understand.
Is that literally correct? Or
I would say aquatic pancake.
Yeah,
that's
just like a pancake.
Yes.
Perfect. An
Yes.
aquatic pancake. Yeah.
On the internet, they call them underwater flaps.
That's scientifically accurate. Yeah.
Underwater flap is,
Definitely.
you see that in a lot of AP biology textbooks.
Yeah, definitely. That, again, more describes Brenda's flaps than my flaps, but they're all pretty flappy.
Mine are more like Roombas.
True.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you said that they are elasmobranchs, and we probably need to explain what exactly an elasmobranch is. So that's a taxonomic classification that all ties into them being part of the subclass Elasmobranchi.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Here in southern Appalachia, we would probably refer to sharks, rays, skates, and I think also sawfish.
Sawfish and guitarfish.
And guitarfish.
And chimera.
We would call those kissing cousins.
I think that's fair.
So if you're not from southern Appalachia, you've just added to your Appalachian lexicon. But they don't look like they should be related. So all the similarities that you mentioned are really more, they seem more internal than anything else. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. A lot of the same features, a lot of the same functions, just compressed. Just flattened out and specialized to be mostly on the bottom, I guess, in our cases, at least. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we keep talking about your rays and my rays. Let's go around the table and explain, since Schrock 568 would also like to know about all the different species of rays here. Let's just go ahead and talk about the rays you specifically care for. So Cody, who do you care for? What species do you care for?
Yeah, I take care of the freshwater rays. So those are rays in the family Potamortrigon. I think I said that correctly. Something really close to that, if not that.
That could honestly just be like a comic book super villain for all I know.
Right. And no matter what, it sounds right and it sounds believable. But my rays live in freshwater. They are mostly found in South America. All of the ones that I take care of currently are from South America. I have, at the moment, 2 Leopoldi rays that I'm caring for. That would be about it for now, but we're speaking with some people in the stud book about rearranging things in the near future.
Okay, so 2 things that we need to explain there. Leopoldi, what is that?
That is the specific species of ray that I'm working with. So that would be and I may not be great on the pronunciation here either, but the Xinhao River ray, Xinu River ray, something along those lines.
Okay.
Also called white-watched ray.
That's the common name.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. We have to speak to the common person here on this show.
A big black disc with white to yellow spots all over its body. Looks a lot like a night sky.
Okay. And you mentioned that you care for those rays in what exhibit?
In the South American stream exhibit beneath the lemur tank.
Trying to do a mental inventory here. I think you are the only freshwater exhibit in all of the Ocean Journey building?
Yes. So whenever you walk into Ocean Journey, if you're following the path the right way, I'm going to be the first tank that you see immediately after you come off of the escalators. You walk up to the lemur exhibit and you look down into my South American river tank where I have my freshwater rays and a couple groups of fishes.
Brenda, what rays do you care for?
So I take care of the spotted eagle rays. We currently have 2. A male and a female. They are both brother and sister, and their names are Phil and Lil, like the Rugrats. And I also take care of the cownose rays that are in Secret Reef. Both of them are located in the Secret Reef. And those guys are...
The flappiest of sea flaps.
Yes, true.
So Kyle mentioned that the rays that he and Cody care for are benthic.
Oh, yes.
And so that, a science term there, that just means more bottom dwelling, correct?
Exactly, yeah.
So the opposite of that would then be pelagic, right?
Yes.
So your rays would be pelagic.
Yes. So my rays, they spend most of their time, if not all the time, circling around the exhibit in the water column. And that is why they have a high metabolism as well. So we have to keep up with their training and stuff.
Okay. Well, we will talk about training later because that is a myth that I think probably needs to be busted as far as it comes to intelligence of fish. Kyle, what rays, you have a lot of them, but what rays do you care for?
I have a lot of rays, but only one exhibit of rays, and that is Stingray Bay. So Stingray Bay has southern stingrays, Atlantic stingrays, a bat ray, Haller's round rays, a blue spotted stingray.
So since Schrock 568 wants to know about caring for rays, Let's kind of get your credentials when it comes to ray husbandry or aquaculture, or however we want to describe that. Cody, how long have you been working with rays?
I have been working with the rays for about 2 years now. I've been full-time with the aquarium about 2 years. I've been with the aquarium about 7. And throughout that time, I've been able to help Rachel out with hers a couple times and a few other people.
Rachel Thayer?
Yes, Rachel Thayer.
Our assistant curator of fishes, who has been on another episode of the podcast. Brenda, how long have you been working with rays, and in what capacity?
About 2.5 years now. Started as an intern 2.5 years ago, and kind of took over the role of our previous Island Life person, Adam Johnson, and just took on the role of the stingray girl, Kaunos, specifically, until we got the spotted eagle rays I think last year.
Yeah, they're a fairly recent
Yes.
addition to the exhibit. And then Kyle, how long have you been working with rays?
I got Stingray Bay was the only exhibit that I took care of when I started in 2011. It was kind of still is. It's a lot of headaches, that exhibit is, and so nobody really wanted it. So when I was brand new, they were like, well, here, you can have this one. And I just grew to love it and diversified that tank and tried to bring in a bunch of different rays and make it more exciting than it was.
What do you love about that exhibit in particular? If you've never been to the aquarium, the Stingray Bay is the largest touch experience of the 2 that we have at the aquarium, the other one being Sturgeon Bend in the River Journey building. What do you love about Stingray Bay in particular?
It's about 9,000 gallons. You mentioned it being larger, so it's almost 9,000 gallons all told. I love the diversity of it. Again, it is one of just 2 exhibits that we have that is not a place. So Stingray Bay is the place. It's not the Atlantic. It's not the Pacific. It's its own mythical place, Stingray Bay. So anything goes. I can have sharks from Australia. I can have rays from California. It's any animals that will tolerate each other. They get along fine. And they have a similar temperature and water parameter overlap, so I can be really flexible in what I put in there. So that's been a lot of fun.
Now that we know which species of ray you work for or you work with and for how long, what's your take on what rays are like to work with? Are they difficult? Are they aggressive? Are they picky eaters?
Well, every animal is going to be very individual, especially whenever you're getting into like larger charismatic animals. Like they're all going to have or all have the potential to have a personality. With my rays, when I first took them, I was under the impression that they were semi-aggressive and a couple other little things like that.
Was that like from anecdotal reports from other people who'd worked with them? Or?
Yes. So a lot of the information around the ones that I take care of had been kind of just given to me by the other people around the aquarium who have taken care of them in the past. And in the past, we have had several semi-aggressive to aggressive individuals in the collection. And historically speaking, there have been envenomations in captivity from them. So it is an animal that is always treated with caution. But
envenomations meaning the people who care for them were
barbed. Yep. You get just a little bit of the venom in your skin from just a nick on the barb is all it takes.
Wow. Okay.
But soon after taking over responsibility for them, I didn't know very much about them at the time. So it was a big learning curve. I almost immediately fell in love. So within like a couple of weeks of me taking care of them, like they were coming up to the edge of the tank when I was coming up to do feedings and whatnot. By the end of my 2nd or 3rd month taking care of them, one of them that was in a backup system had trained me to hand feed it.
Okay. Now, how does that work?
He's very cute and tells me what he wants, and I obey for treats.
Okay.
Yes. And the treat is him being cute and taking food from me. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's what I try to do with the dogs when I'm not here, but in reverse.
So you have other animals in the stream exhibit. Are the rays your favorite?
They're one of my favorite groups of animals, period, right now. I wouldn't want to single them out as my favorite in the tank, though.
Okay, so what do you love about rays just in general?
The personality. Like I said, this one, I credit him training me to hand feed him. He comes up to the edge, he mouths at it, he flaps at me. It's very much I know you are the human who will give me food, but in my eyes, it's adorable and he loves me. Because we anthropomorphize everything as humans, which isn't great in our field, but it is fun to kind of do for fun. But yeah.
Okay, Brenda, what's your take? What are rays like to work with? And do they have a personality?
Oh, they absolutely do have a personality. I remember my first few interactions with them in the Secret Reef exhibit while training. They just seemed like little puppies coming up for food and feeding off of the platform. Back when we were training them at the animal care facility, we were hand feeding them, and they were pretty cool to work with. They're calm creatures. When you see them swimming in the Secret Reef, it's almost like, a little nice feeling.
Yeah, they're very zen-like to watch.
Zen-like, yes.
Yeah, we call them underwater flat flaps. So they look like the world's most like lethargic bird. Like they just flap their. I mean, in fact, don't you call them stingray wings?
More again with Brenda's style ray. You could say wing.
It'd be like a disc, I guess, for yours.
Generally, we say disc for the more round ones.
Okay, so yours are winged rays.
Yeah, mine are like more diamond shaped versus theirs are rounder.
So when the eagle rays go by the window, or the cow nose rays go by the window, it is it is fun to watch them because they do look like birds in slow motion.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle, what are rays like to work with? Are they full of personality? Charismatic? Because yours are the ones that people actually have a chance to actually have their own interaction with.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm there in the morning, obviously before we open, and they're at their craziest. So they're giving me that reaction that Cody describes, because they know if someone's there at that time of day, it's hopefully for food, and they're being super rowdy. How Brenda said hers are calm and relaxed. When I work with mine, they're just over the top. They're splashing. They're getting water on the floor that the horticulture volunteers just cleaned up. They're being just super crazy, thinking food's coming. Then again, once we get open and kind of calmer, they'll settle down. And talking about them having personality, definitely there's individuals that want to go interact with the guests and individuals that don't. So there's that distinction even between individuals of the same species. Like some will be a lot more social with the guests than others. Another hiccup for my exhibit, I really wanted more fish in there. Generally, stingray touch tanks, it's a bunch of stingrays. That's it. And I think that's kind of boring. So I wanted to have a diversity of fish as well as diversity of the rays. Problem is lots of fish will pick on the rays. Then lots of fish will get eaten by the rays. So it's like you got to find fish that are big but won't pick at the rays because, they're difficult to mix in a multi-species like that.
Big enough not to be eaten,
right?
But not so big that they're going to pick on the rays.
Exactly. And not so big that they're going to eat the other fish that have happened to work in there. So yeah, that's why you don't see why you don't see bony fish in a stingray touch tank generally.
So how do you strike that balance? Is that just a matter of research or trial and error?
A little of both. Again, since most facilities aren't doing that mix, there's not a ton for me to reference. So it's hard to mix some nice small pretty fish with your big flat fish.
Okay, so Cody, you mentioned anthropomorphizing, so assigning human-like qualities to things that aren't human. And I think there's a tendency when we think of things that the farther it is away from humans taxonomically speaking, the less we tend to assign intelligence to something. So people don't tend to associate fish with intelligence, which is kind of a slippery slope. But for lack of a better word, do you find that rays are intelligent?
Yes.
How so? How do they exhibit intelligence?
So that one is a weird one for me because I tend to think of all animals as being intelligent to the capacity that they need to be intelligent. It's like the Einstein quote. I think it was Einstein anyways. I don't know. If the test is, can you climb this tree? A fish is always going to fail it.
I'll have to look up this exact quote and insert it somewhere. It's not surprising that we couldn't remember Einstein's quote about fish climbing trees, but that's because Einstein didn't even say it. The quote, for lack of a better term, since it's misattributed at best, is something along the lines of, Everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Those are wise words, sure, but they didn't come from the mouth of Einstein, although he might have agreed with them. Garson O'Toole, the author of Hemingway Didn't Say That, The Truth Behind Familiar Quotations, tried to run down the origins of this nugget of not quite Einsteinian wisdom. He found similar sounding quotes dating back to the 1800s in a variety of publications and, quote, no substantive evidence connecting Einstein to the quotation. Alas, this is a wonderful quote whose author may never be known. Anyway, let's get back to the podcast, folks.
My rays are really good at doing what they do. They live on the bottom. I get a lot of what Kyle was just referencing with my angelfish as well. So they do a little bit of hunting, a little bit of moving around. They interact with each other. They interact with me. They come to me for food. They, as Kyle mentioned, realize, hey, there's one person in here right now. The sun is about this bright right now, and he's wearing potentially a blue shirt. I don't know if they can see blue or not. But they know that this equals food. And to me, that is some level of intelligence. Like, Similarly with a dog. The way the dogs learn things is through reinforcement and training. If I can reinforce a training with an animal, I would consider it intelligent.
Okay, so Brenda, that's a nice segue to talking about your work, because you I think touched on training before. So talk about the training that you've done with the cow nose and spotted eagle rays, and what that tells you about their capacity for intelligence.
So any animal, if they are being trained, they have to have a certain amount of intelligence. So yes, I do consider stingrays to be smart and intelligent, just because of the experience that I've had here at the Tennessee Aquarium, training the cow nose and the spotted eagle rays to come to a platform on our secret reef exhibit. Like Cody was saying, they see a blue shirt, but in this case, they see a platform going into the water that's white and black, and that is their cue to come to the platform and eat.
Let's take just a second to explain exactly how you interact with the rays. So you talk about feeding them. What exactly does that look like?
So a feeding session for the stingrays there is, I have a platform that's made out of PVC and Kydex, and it's lowered into the water about a foot from the surface.
Kind of looks like a rigid hammock.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like an L-shaped hammock. And the rays swim through. They stay a little bit on the platform while they're eating the food that's being put on the platform by me using tongs or grabby things.
Yeah, like an extendo grabber.
Yes, like a trash grabber.
Sure.
Gator.
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah, when you first start the feeding, it's kind of like a little hectic because they all come at once and it gets splashy and everybody's there. But once everybody has their little mouthful, they go around the tank and only come back whenever they finish their food.
What kinds of food do we feed the rays that you care for?
I feed the rays a mixture of seafood, shrimp, squid, capelin, and sometimes smelt or silver sides, but not really because they're kind of slippery.
So they're kinds of fish.
Yes.
Okay. And then Kyle, would you describe rays as intelligent?
Yeah, I agree for sure. So I don't really do any training, which both of y'all do some. I was really impressed with the cow nose rays when she first started at the animal care facility when they were trying to get them used to this method of feeding. It kind of took a long time, it felt like. It's like, oh, what the heck? I thought that they were going to pick this up really quick. But then when they moved to the exhibit, I was a little worried, like, she doesn't do it at the same time every day. And, like, consistency is so important. So I'm like, are they going to get this? And they do. It's amazing. Like, again, what little I know about training and what little I do with it, I was like, oh, that could be a problem. But no, like, no matter when she drops that thing in, first thing in the morning, last thing at the end of the day, they all show up, like, right away. And again, I don't do much of that with mine. I think they're just kind of used to the routine, like Cody said, where the sun is in the sky when they see just one person. Mine, they really don't do any training at all. But you see with their behavior that they definitely have the capability of learning for sure.
I guess there are probably some people who, when they see the touch experience, I've read social comments about people being concerned, like, what if the rays don't want to be touched? And I mean, it sounds like from what you said earlier that there are individuals who do want to be touched. So how does that manifest? How can you tell that a ray wants to be touched?
So we talked about the size of that exhibit earlier, and being 9,000 gallons, it's got a really nice layout in that there's some narrow areas where people can reach the rays when they go through, and then there's some really wide open areas. So rays, again, they learn the spaces in the tank, and they know if they don't want to go hang out with people, they know where to go to avoid them. So I think it's a really nice layout in that it gives the animals the choice to come interact with us or to hide out in the middle a little bit, be away from people. But yeah, you can definitely tell some, like, oh, they're just swimming. They swim by the window, 3 people touch them, and they're going to go out in the middle now. But no, they might turn around and go back by the same window. Like, well, he's not trying to go anywhere in particular. He's clearly coming over here to hang out with these people.
I feel like the bat ray, I think that one is like tickling my memory, that one is one that really likes to be, or courts that kind of interaction.
Yeah, the bat ray definitely does. And the southern stingrays probably second most into that. Okay,
so Kyle, you have worked with rays for a pretty long time, but Cody and Brenda, you have both are still fairly new to working with them. Do you look forward to the opportunity to interact with them? I mean, you both care for a lot of other animals and other exhibits. Do you anticipate the opportunities to work with the rays in particular? I mean, I think you do. I mean, Cody.
Oh yeah, obviously I can't stop word vomiting about them. I love working with them. Again, it wasn't a group of animals that I expected to get very excited about that I ended up getting extremely excited about. And earlier I mentioned a stud book. We never kind of circled, we never answered, or just explained that one anyways. A stud book, that's just kind of like our breeding program. Somebody within AZA is kind of keeping up with numbers and genetics and arranging to make sure that we're doing responsible breeding for the individuals that we are breeding within this group.
And AZA is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. That's the body that accredits zoos and aquariums, and we are accredited through the AZA.
Yes. And up until a few weeks ago, I hadn't planned on requesting. I currently have a male that is eligible for the breeding program, and I hadn't been planning on requesting a female. But now that they've reached out, I'm up in the air about it because I absolutely love the idea of having a female and making baby rays, even though I don't necessarily want the additional workload that would come with baby rays.
But think of how cute a little flap would be.
Oh, it would be so cute. Oh, it would be so cute.
Brenda, what do you look forward to working with your rays? I mean, again, you've got a lot of other responsibilities. Is that a part of your job that you look forward to doing?
Even though there's been like several complications throughout the time that I've had the cow nose rays and the spotted eagle rays, that is my favorite thing to do still, is
really?
Feed them. Yeah.
Why?
I feel very fulfilled once I know that they're eating and they're getting fed and trained properly.
Well, and so, yeah, again, I guess this also kind of goes back to 2 different approaches that we have to feeding animals at the aquarium. So there's target feeding, and then there's broadcast feeding. So broadcast feeding is more like you kind of throw a large amount of food into an exhibit and everybody gets to have some. And then target feeding, specifically feeding one individual. And it sounds like not necessarily in your case, Kyle, but in your case, Cody and Brenda, you target feed?
Yes, I target feed just because of the size of the tank that they are in. Secret Reef is 618,000 gallons. And since they are pelagic species, meaning they're swimming around in the water column, they wouldn't have enough opportunities to eat from the bottom because all the other fish would be eating the food that's being thrown in.
Yeah, and with mine currently, I do target feed them to do some hand feeding at least once a week. I'm more keeping them comfortable with it than keeping them trained at this point. Otherwise, I do let them eat from the broadcast with everybody else in the tank. I initially started the training with the one that was in a backup system because I was hoping to move him to a much deeper tank, our flooded Amazon tank. And similar story. a whole lot of animals in that exhibit. It's really deep. So in order to make sure he was able to eat in that exhibit, I wanted him to know to come up at a queue to get food from the surface. But I ended up being able to make room to move him to my freshwater ray tank.
So the idea, or the reason I bring that up, is because target feeding an animal, you are having a direct interaction with an animal on an individual basis, which I feel like just plants the seeds of having a stronger relationship with that animal than you would if you were just kind of throwing food into the exhibit.
That's why I work here. The touch tank in elementary school.
Sorry.
I love that you raised your hand, Brenda. I'm not a teacher, but go ahead. The floor recognizes Brenda.
And also with platform training and target feeding, you get that interaction where you're able to make them more comfortable to your presence. Therefore, you're able to do health checks and weight checks. And that's what we have been doing with my cow nose. We've been doing weight checks on them every 3 months. So. And
it occurs to me that I'm making you sound callous, Kyle, as if you were intentionally not target feeding your rays. But you do obviously do target feeding because you care for, as people who have listened to the episode would know, the larger sharks in Secret Reef as well. And those are also target fed for a lot of the same reasons that Brenda mentioned.
Yeah, true. Exactly. The big sharks live in the same tank with the cow nose. And there's a lot of more aggressive fish in there than the elasmobranchs we work with. Stingray Bay is a lot easier in that sense, in that it is just a group of rays and pretty docile sharks. So we can just toss in the prescribed amount of food, kind of watch the animal's body condition and body weight, and know that they're all getting it. You don't have to actually hand each animal some food because there aren't a ton of other fish in there to compete as much as I want there to be.
Yeah. You mentioned, Cody, I guess, the venom on Stingray's barb. Steve Irwin's death back in 2006 is probably, I think, raised a lot of people's awareness of stingrays and the fact that they could pose a danger to people in the wild. So do any of you have any tips from working with them or just interacting with them, maybe outside the aquarium, about how you can maybe be stingray safe if you happen to be at the beach or somewhere else where rays might be found?
There's the stingray shuffle. It sounds like a dance move, but it's really like just shuffling your feet against the sand because they do kind of burrow sometimes, so you can't see them. And if you accidentally step on them, it's not necessarily attacking you, it's just defending itself.
A perhaps not so brief aside here. It occurs to me as I'm putting this episode together that I name dropped Steve Irwin without clarifying who that is for the listeners who potentially weren't even alive when he was on TV. Steve Irwin was a much-loved Australian zookeeper, conservationist, and wildlife educator who became an extremely popular TV personality in the 1990s through the TV program The Crocodile Hunter. Irwin and his wife Terry co-hosted the program, which became well-loved for the fearless, daringly unconventional approach that Irwin took to interacting with wildlife. The show initially aired on Animal Planet and then on Discovery Channel. There was also a fictionalized feature film spinoff, The Crocodile Hunter Collision Course, which I have never seen and wasn't even aware of until I started looking this up. Some people criticized him for harassing animals, but I sensed a deep-seated passion for wildlife in Irwin that made me think highly of him, despite being flabbergasted that he wasn't getting hurt all the time. Unfortunately, Irwin died on September 4th, 2006. At the time, he was filming an underwater documentary, Ocean's Deadliest, on the Great Barrier Reef. When swimming in shallow water alongside an Australian bull ray, he was unexpectedly stung. The stingray's barb pierced his heart, and despite efforts to save him, he was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. This was a highly publicized stingray attack. Air quotes here that you can't see, since it was probably a defensive maneuver on the ray's part and not actually an attack. This incident led to a lot of unwarranted fear of stingrays. Statistically, though, you're far more likely to die from more common banal things like falling out of bed, being stung by a bee, or being hit in the head by a coconut than you are from an encounter with a stingray. Unfortunately, stingray attacks, again in air quotes, are so uncommon that they're not tracked as rigorously as those by animals like sharks, so the records are a little hazy. However, at the time of Irwin's death, news reports cited findings from Australian experts that only 17 to 30 deaths worldwide since 1945 were attributable to stingray encounters. All that to say, Irwin's death, while extremely tragic, was also extremely rare. And on that maudlin note, let's get back to the podcast. So, given the fact that, the people who visit the aquarium obviously will not be getting in the exhibit and doing the stingray shuffle, but how do we make sure as an institution that you can have the interactions that we have in Stingray Bay with these animals in a safe way? So
of the three groups of animals we've been talking about, Stingray Bay is the only one that we do trim their barbs. Each stingray has a tag, like an internal tag like your cat and dog would have. so we can tell individuals apart. If we can't tell visually, we generally can, but if, just to make sure each individual has its tracking number. So you can scan them, note if you've got to trim the barb or if it's still square. We don't surgically remove it. We don't cut it out or anything like that. It's literally just making the end not sharp. So they still have it on their tail. You can see them in the touch tank, but now it's not pointy.
Let's talk about their barbs, though. What material are they made from? They're obviously not made of bone because no part of a ray is bone. So is it made of cartilage? Is it made of keratin? What is it made of?
It is keratin based, yes.
So keratin, like what the material that makes up our fingernails.
Exactly, hair and nails.
Why do you think it's important that we do trim the barbs so that people can have a physical interaction with these animals? Why is touching an animal important in terms of how they perceive that animal or the connection that they feel with that animal?
So I remember as a kid even hearing like stingrays are scary, right? Like they've got this big pointy thing on their tail, and there's old like folklore, like they slash their victims with their tail, and they seem to be a kind of a scary sea creature. So to have people be able to come in and see this ray that's cute and friendly towards them, not trying to get them, just really drive home that reaction and that interaction rather, to realize that there's special animals out in the ocean. Like you see, the oceans have all this plastic. The oceans have these problems, this warming, these issues going on. It's like, well, I live in Tennessee. What do I care? And then you come here and you meet a stingray. It's like, wait, these animals are who lives in the ocean that's having all these issues? And just to really drive home that connection and make people care about it. Yeah,
and I think once you've been here and touched a stingray and maybe even been fortunate enough to watch maybe one being fed by a diver in river giants, you can kind of take in the fact that their mouths look almost like they're smiling all the time. They have really adorable, kind of derpy looking faces. And once you've been exposed to that, it's kind of hard not to feel kindly toward them.
Absolutely. Make that connection. Like Cody said, coming here, I assume it was to the sturgeon touch tank as a kid, just to like give him that lifelong connection. And I think it's not the only person to have that happen.
So, Cody, you mentioned how much you would like to have micro flaps.
Yes.
Even if they meant extra work. So let's talk a little bit about reproduction. Kyle, you, I guess, regularly deal with this. How do rays reproduce?
So I glossed over another group of rays we have because none of us here directly take care of them. We also have 5 southern stingrays in the Secret Reef exhibit, and those rays are responsible for the southern stingrays that live in Stingray Bay as well. So that exhibit initially had just 2 males and 2 females, and they produced many offspring. So stingrays, they'll have internal fertilization, like all elasmobranchs. So they're not laying eggs out on a nest and getting externally fertilized. It's just kind of that distinction. So they'll have internal fertilization, and then they have an egg case of sorts. The female doesn't lay an egg. Basically, they're holding onto that egg. It's a pouch within the mother stingray. So then the baby will come out of that and stay in for a little while longer, being further nourished with uterine milk, it's called. So they'll be in an egg sac. It's really not even an egg. It's like this little pouch, this soft structure that each individual will be in.
Embryonic sac.
Ooh, an embryonic sac.
Is that really is that the scientific term?
I don't know for sure with rays, but I do know that's the term that I've used with other animals.
Oh, I learned something new. Okay, hold on to your hats, folks. It's about to get real sciencey in here. Now's a good time for us to take a pause to discuss the different ways that reproduction occurs. There are probably more methods than the ones I'm about to cover, but I'm not a biologist, and we don't have time to cover all the means by which animals progenerate. Besides, the terms we're about to cover are the 3 main methods used by species with which most of us are probably familiar. First, we have oviparous animals. Oviparous species lay eggs in which their young develop while receiving nutrition from an internal yolk until they're ready to hatch. These include lizards, turtles, birds, and many aquatic species, ranging from bony fish and octopuses to other elasmobranchs, such as skates. Then there are animals that are oviviparous, the term for the form of reproduction Kyle was just discussing. Oviviparous animals develop initially inside an egg. However, these eggs aren't laid. They hatch inside the mother's body, where the young continue to develop until ready to be delivered via live birth. Ovoviviparity is seen in stingrays as well as some species of snakes, spiders, and insects. Finally, we have viviparous animals, or those in which the young develop internally and receive nutrition via a direct connection with the mother through a structure like a placenta. Viviparous animals include things like some snakes, such as vipers, and most mammals besides the platypus, which seems bent on being a living exception to basically every biological rule. Speaking of exceptions, you'll notice I haven't mentioned sharks. Well, that's because sharks exhibit all three reproductive strategies. Some, such as bull sharks and hammerheads, are viviparous. Others, such as the coral cat sharks, horn sharks, and epaulet sharks you can see in our Stingray Bay exhibit, lay protective, leathery-cased eggs colloquially known as mermaid's purses. Still others, such as the sand tiger sharks and sandbar sharks living in our Secret Reef exhibit, are oviviparous and hatch their eggs internally. I guess when you've been around as long as sharks have, you can get away with taking a shotgun-style approach to reproductive strategy. Also, Kyle mentions that stingray babies continue to grow after hatching internally by feeding on a supply of uterine milk until they are given birth. This protein and fat-rich substance is also called histotroph and is fed to the baby ray through secretions from specialized structures called trophonomata located in the mother's uterine wall. This form of internal nutrition during embryonic development is called histotrophy. Okay, I know that's a lot of science terms to digest, but now you can impress all your non-scientist friends or other members of the Podcast Aquanaut Corps at your next cocktail party. You guys do have secret cocktail parties, right? Anyway, back to the podcast. Kyle, you've had opportunities to raise some baby rays before. So the appearance of a baby ray, is it more of a surprise? I mean, you know when an egg is there for a shark. I mean, you pull it out and you raise it up until it hatches. Sometimes you even help them hatch. So with a ray, is it kind of a shock when it happens?
It's different for sure. So we touched on the Secret Reef Southerns. They're so big that it is a surprise. Like generally the bigger the female ray, the less you can really tell. We're not catching them up regularly, doing ultrasound. We're not actively trying to get a bunch of baby rays, so we're not being super hands-on with our females. So basically when they show up in the Secret Reef, yeah, it's a surprise. In Stingray Bay, Atlantic stingrays have had pups in there before, and there's such a small array that it's generally pretty obvious. And that tank is so much easier to see the individual rays versus the Secret Reef. So in there, you can tell, like, the rays, like, looking really, really thick. And then, then you get some baby rays after that.
And some of the baby rays that you have helped raise they're now, like, we size class them, right? So they made their way into the Secret Reef. Like, that's where they live now?
Yeah, so Secret Reef, I touched on it earlier, never circled back. We have had 2 males, 2 females. And then they produced the ones in Stingray Bay. And ultimately then 2 females and a male from Stingray Bay have grown up and gone back to the Secret Reef.
So it's like multi-generational then?
It is, yeah. The 2 original females have since aged out. So we do still have the 2 original males. Joining them are, 2 of their female offspring and 1 male offspring.
So Kyle and Brenda, I know the 2 of you are scuba certified. You recently, I think, Brenda, right? Wasn't it this year that you got scuba certified?
Yeah. Well, it's a year ago.
It was last year. Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Cody, are you dive certified?
I am.
Okay. So have you all been in the water with rays before in Secret Reef or in River Giants?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we dive Secret Reef pretty regularly. River Giants, maybe not as much. But yeah, we've been in there. So
what are they like then? The free swimming ones, when you're in the water with them, are they curious about you? Do they show any interest at all in the divers? I think I've heard that they like to play with bubbles.
I do love that they do play with bubbles.
What form does that take? How do they play with them?
So they will hover above the divers and just sit on top of their heads where the bubbles are reaching in their face.
And so does it like just feel good, or do they like to what?
So actually, whenever I was certified and my first time in Secret Reef, I was like, I want to experience this. So I was diving and above another diver, and that actually does tickle your face.
The bubbles?
Yes, the bubbles tickle your face.
Okay, so they're like, it feels weird or good to them.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess they like the stimulation of it, but it's pretty cute to watch.
Have you had any fun interactions with the rays in the exhibit, Cody?
The large whiptail rays and the river giants are some of my favorite animals to dive with because they are giant aquatic puppies that have no idea how big they are and are very much aware that that blue container in your hand is full of their dinner.
Looks kind of like a watering pail, but with like a flexible cover on top, right? That you can stick your hand in.
It's basically a massive piece of PVC that's been painted blue and has a rubber lid I can put my hand through in. Painted blue so they can't see through it. Idea is they don't see the food, they don't get as excited, but they are very much aware the food is coming from this bucket. Anyways, I have not had this happen to me. I have been told that if they get a good grip on your gloved hand, whenever you're hand feeding them in that tank, that they can drag you across the bottom. There have been multiple instances where after feeding in that tank while scrubbing on the rocks, I'll all of a sudden feel something covering my entire back, and it is a ray that has blanketed me and is just kind of like moving his little way along. Hey guy, you have any more food? No. All right, I'm gone. And goes about his day. We try not to let them do stuff like that whenever we are in the water with them, but focused on rock really intently scrubbing, and cute things happen sometimes.
Kyle, do you like being in the water with the rays?
Definitely. It's hard to appreciate the scale of those whip rays that Cody was talking about till you see the divers in with them, because they're, again, like, you can be down on the bottom of that tank and suddenly it's all dark, and it's because they're just over you like a big weighted blanket, and then acting like a puppy. They're like, like a Great Dane puppy that doesn't know how big and goofy he is. And since the divers do feed that exhibit, they associate us with the food. So in Secret Reef, they kind of just do their own thing. But yeah, in River Giants, they're like trying to check you out for some more food.
And their mouths are kind of like surprisingly small for how big their body is.
So we don't dive that exhibit very often because the volunteers, that's part of their normal routine. But when we were closed and not having volunteers coming in, we were doing all the feeding dives. I'd never fed them before because the volunteers do. So the southern rays, the big ones we had at the time, I mean, the big females were probably 4 feet across, which I fed them all the time. So I was used to that and got in to River Giants expecting, I know they're big, whatever. I'll just, not stick my finger in its mouth just like you do any other ray. You offer them, just let the food come out a little bit, and first ray comes up, gets right on me, and bites my hand. I was trying to be so careful, but yeah, my whole hand fit in its mouth in a bad, blink of an eye.
And you mentioned they have crushing plates for teeth. What does that feel like?
They kind of just have a molar top and bottom. So it's not sharp teeth. It's just a big crushing plate. But they're not super savage. It's not like they're grabbing stuff and ripping it up. It just
it's like pressure.
Yeah, exactly. They're
clearly you survived this encounter.
I did. It's kind of like a file. It can be a little rough. If you're barehanded, it can cut your skin a little bit. But we were diving with gloves on.
Also, it might be worth mentioning that the whiptail rays, we don't debarb. They're just, generally speaking, pretty docile, pretty well behaved.
So is there etiquette when you're in the water with the barbed rays?
Don't land on them.
Yeah, same as walking, on the beach. So when the diver's coming down, if the ray is sitting right there on the bottom, he's going to watch where he's going to touch down on the bottom of the tank so he doesn't land right on top of the ray.
So that's part of the onboarding process, I guess, for volunteer divers is don't do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of training for them.
All right. With that, I think we can safely end this discussion about rays, unless any of the three of you have points that you'd like to talk about as far as caring for rays or your love of rays or anything ray related. So that Schrock 568, who I would love to just call Schrock. I feel like we're best friends now. So that Schrock doesn't feel neglected or like we haven't adequately covered the topic. Anything else that you'd like to add?
That he better get a Christmas card from you this year.
Oh, okay. Sure. Schrock, send me your address. I'll see if I've got an extra one to send you.
Vice versa. I want a Christmas card from Schrock.
Wait, can I have one too?
All right. Well, Schrock, you have your marching orders. We would all like Christmas cards. All right. Well, with that, then, I think we can go ahead and safely end this episode of the Podcast Aquatic. My thanks go out to Cody, to Brenda, and to Kyle. Thank you to all three of you. And if you have an idea like Schrock for a future episode of the podcast and would like to send it to us, you can email me at podcast@tnaqua.org. And please do leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. Or if you don't have time for that, just leave us a rating. And in the meantime, until the next time that we talk, remember that every drop matters.